we're going to get started. So I'm Jennifer Prescott, one of the founders of Blue Water Homecare. And so we're super excited to have Kim and Mike Barnes here today. I want to introduce three special people. So Sharon Goss, she is going to be introducing Kim and Mike. She is with Blue Water Homecare and super excited to have you here. Jennifer Gibson with Ascension-Seton Hospice. So Jennifer, do you have anything you just want to say?
Well, hello.
Hi.
I'm so glad that everybody was able to jump on today. I know with all this new virtual meeting, sometimes it can be a little tricky. I've had a couple of others this morning and people weren't all able to figure it all out. So I appreciate it. Hopefully this will help us in that. But yes, I'm with Ascension-Seton Hospice. We are part of the Ascension-Seton Hospital Network as well as the physician clinics. And we are in the local area, Travis, Hayes, Williamson, Burnett, Bastrop counties. And if you have any questions about hospice, I'd love to talk to you or anybody at your community, office, families, anybody. I love to educate people about hospice.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And Julie Latson, she's with Accountable Aging. So Julie, you want to let us know a little bit about you and Accountable Aging?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Julie. I'm with Accountable Aging Care Management. We are a professional care management firm who acts as really a project manager for families, older adults who are trying to navigate the healthcare system. So if y'all have anybody who has a family that's struggling, doesn't have a local family, or lots of family that don't always get along, we're a really good resource to help those people get through the challenges of the healthcare system. So thank you so much for letting us join. And I did inadvertently end up with two small children with me, so I may go to my name.
It's okay.
Might get interrupted.
No worries at all. So I'm Jennifer again with Blue Water Homecare. So we are a non-medical home care agency. We are locally owned and operated. My husband and I started the company about 3 years ago. We have 3 nurses on staff. So we are skilled management of non-skilled care. So we serve about 70 clients in the Austin and surrounding areas. And we provide bathing, dressing, grooming, medication reminders, and we have the privilege of working with both Jennifer and Julie on a daily basis, supporting their clients. So I want to introduce you to Sharon Goss, and she is going to introduce you to Mike and Kim Barnes.
Hello, everybody. Kim and Mike Barnes have spent 30 years on the air, and now they coach clients on camera, Zoom videos, webinars, media interviews, and public speaking. Kim was an award-winning reporter and news anchor for 15 years, and including more than a decade on KVUE in Austin. Kim has taught television news reporting at the University of Texas. Mike was an award-winning sportscaster for KVUE for 29 years. He was named Best Sportscaster in Austin 17 years and Best in Texas for 4 years. This dynamic duo knows how to make a great impression on camera and in front of a room. Welcome, Kim and Mike. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. We're glad to be with you all today and hope that we will be able to give you a lot of things that you can put into practice just right away to improve your virtual communication.
Yeah, we'll have a fun time today. You're going to enjoy it, I guarantee.
And we want you to be interactive. We're going to ask you questions, so we would love for you to put thoughts in the chat, and if you have questions, put them in the Q&A as well. But one thing I want to start with is that, you know, when we were in journalism school a long time ago, we knew that to be a news reporter, a sports reporter, or sports anchor, we knew that we would need to learn how to be on camera, that would be part of our job description. But I would be pretty fair in assuming that there's probably not any of you that thought, ooh, if I go into healthcare, if I become a doctor, if I work at a retirement community, if I work in hospice, perfect, that will give me the chance to be on camera. Anybody? Yet here we are, right?
It's today's Zoom world.
That's right.
Pretty interesting. And I know a lot of people just aren't comfortable or used to being on camera. Kim and I were like that 30 years ago when we got out of college and we first started being on TV. It's like, okay, this isn't exactly what we were used to. It's a little nerve wracking at first. You think, oh my gosh, I'm on TV, I'm on camera. This is kind of strange. And when that happens, a lot of times different parts of your personality come up to where you become a laugher or a leaner, a rambler or a reader, a nervous Nelly, a whisperer, an ummer, a lounger. So many things come up, and it helps you kind of make up for the fact that you're nervous. So let's get rid of all that. Make sure that you're very comfortable and confident about being on camera. Doesn't mean you're going to be great or perfect, because Kim and I still aren't great or perfect after all these years, but we're very, very, very comfortable. And because of that, we're confident and able to be very effective on camera because of that. So that's our goal.
So I see that somebody put in the chat, Leslie, that she changed her majors twice to get out of having to take a public speaking class. And so, yes, Mike tells stories of his public speaking class in high school that did not go so well.
No, it didn't. Very first day, I'll tell you real quick, very first day of class, you had to stand up, say your name, your grade, because you could have been 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, and why you were taking class. And it got around to me, and it was getting close. My heart's beating like that. Oh my gosh. It gets to me, and I stand up. Hi, I'm Mike Barnes, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm in here because I want to be a sportscaster. And I sit back down. And the teacher's like, oh my gosh, I have no chance with this kid. Wow.
Yeah. So, and here you are. So it just shows that it's probably, while it wasn't something that you necessarily chose to do with this virtual world, it's so important to be effective, because we've all seen situations that in all the virtual meetings that we're doing now that probably have looked a little bit like this. Anybody been that person or seen that person in one of their recent meetings?
We still see that person in every Zoom meeting or webinar that we're in, it seems like. Everyone does one of those things.
And while, in and of itself, it's not as much of an issue, it's just one of those things that a lot of those things become distractions. And what we find that if people are distracted, then what are they focused on? They're focused on the distraction and not what you're saying or what you're sharing. And, if we're having communication, we want them to be listening to us. So yeah, so somebody commented that, yes, drives me nuts. So we want to help you avoid some of those things, because again, sometimes we don't know what we don't know, or we don't realize that it might be a distraction to the other person. And so much of communication is that we want to make it as easy as possible for the other person to be able to connect with us and be able to understand and take in what it is that we're trying to share.
When it's a Father's Day family Zoom meeting, because you have people in Dallas and Houston and Austin and all over the place, and you're just trying to get together, it's kind of okay when your 82-year-old father is like this, saying, "Can you see me, son?" Okay, that's okay. You put up with that. But when it's something for business, when you're talking to a client or clients, you want to make it the best you can and make sure there's no distractions so they hear everything you're saying and every important word that you're trying to convey to them.
So as you're thinking about the things that you may be having challenges about having to go virtual, and it may be that you've gotten over some of this now, hopefully that it's been a few months now, but what are the things that are difficult for you, or the challenges? Is it working the technology? Is it the fact that you just really don't like being on camera? Or is it the fact that you really hate not being able to be face to face?
Sometimes it's hitting the wrong button when you go on Zoom, or maybe it's another virtual platform that you're not used to, or maybe it's something else. And I think we all have different fears about being on camera or being on a virtual platform that hold us back at least just a little bit.
So we would love for you to post that, just comment in the chat if there's something that, is it that you don't like, that you have 5 kids at home and that's the challenge. I mean, there's so many different factors that we're having to take into consideration, especially since we're all working from home, and we often have extra people at home that maybe didn't used to, even if you worked from home already, maybe you have extra people at home, or it's just a challenging environment because, we had to set up a little doggy door today so that hopefully our dog doesn't bark, because our daughter's not here to be able to keep an eye on her. So
last night we had a Zoom meeting with some clients and our dog starts going crazy and barking and barking. She loves it when the UPS truck drives by, and everyone heard that.
Right, exactly. So somebody said managing kids in video meetings, absolutely a challenge. And hats off to all the parents who are having to manage, at least not school right this minute, but school and working and your normal load while you're from home, and maybe don't have the right setup at home either. So that can be kind of a challenge too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have you do, and the fatigue of the 6 to 8 hours of video.
Back to back to back to back to back.
I really think that there's something called, and I've just kind of coined it, Zoom fatigue, and it can happen on any platform. It doesn't matter which one you have, but I absolutely think that it's exhausting. And if you are doing it in some ways well-ish, it does require more energy to be on virtual than it does in person sometimes, because you lose some of that energy through the camera. It just sort of dissipates somewhere between the time it leaves my body and the time it gets to you. It loses some of that energy. So you have to be a little more energetic. A little extra. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm going to have you do a little exercise for those of you who aren't driving. And if you're not on your phone to access this webinar, I want you to take a quick selfie of yourself, and nobody will see it. This is just an exercise for you, but just take a quick selfie of yourself, not smiling. So it should just take just a second.
Just get your phone out. I know it sounds weird. If you're driving, I think it was Jennifer was driving. Right. Don't do that.
Right.
But otherwise, get your phone out and take a little picture.
And the reason why, and I know it sounds kind of goofy, but it will show you two different things. The first thing is that what's the expression that you have on your face? And that's helpful just to know. And I know I set you up a little bit because I told you not to smile, but also just keep in mind that that's when you log into a Zoom meeting, when you are popping on to work with somebody from your community or a client or a patient, that's the expression they see. So do you look sad? Do you look mad? Do you look confused because you're trying to figure out the technology? What is it that might give them the impression that you are less than happy to be there?
Because so many times at the very beginning of a Zoom meeting, or the very beginning of a video that you're doing for Facebook or for Twitter or for LinkedIn, you're all nervous and you have that look of consternation, and then you're ready to talk and you're all friendly. But that very first frame, the very first thing they see, that first impression they get is you going, "Oh, I hate this. I'm not going to enjoy this." And then you smile. But a lot of times it's that first frame that's used as the thumbnail, and that's what people see. So just be careful with that. And Kim likes to say to start with a smile.
Right. Or start with a grin, actually, because you aren't going to walk around like this all the time, because that would feel awkward. But just it just takes like a few little muscles just to have a pleasant look on your face. And that just, again, helps you know how people see you when you're not smiling. So that's kind of just a little helpful hint. The real reason I wanted you to look at that, though, is I want you to look at, who am I looking at? And if you're comfortable posting that in the chat, when you look at that, do you realize, where was I looking when I took the picture? Was I looking here at myself, which is normal because you want to talk, we're used to having one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, it's kind of like looking in the mirror.
And we are drawn to talking to a person. So sometimes, even if it's us in the screen, we tend to look at the person here. But the challenge is that if I look down, so if I'm looking at the screen to where, especially if I'm in a Zoom meeting and I want to look at Jennifer or I want to look at Sharon, Sharon or Jennifer, you can open your mic if you want to. Does it look like I'm looking at you and talking right to you?
No, it does not.
But if I look up at the lens, which is the dot at the top of your camera, at the top of your computer or on your phone, you have to know where it is. If I look at the camera, then hopefully every single one of you feels like I'm talking right to you.
Well, I think that's the hardest thing, because it's awkward, it's awkward because you physically have to look at the camera. Mm-hmm. When you're doing a Zoom call, it's hard because where do you look, and do you look with your eyes, or what does that look like?
Absolutely. It's terribly awkward, but but if you think about it, it's like if I'm having a conversation with Mike in person, if I were to walk up to him and say, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you, what are we going to talk about today? It would make him uncomfortable. And so, I mean, again, with Zoom, I think we're somewhat used to the fact that most people don't know to look at the camera. But if you want, in so many of our businesses where, especially if we're working with potential new residents for our community, or we're working with patients, we need to build that know, like, and trust factor. And what's the best way to build trust is to actually make eye contact.
We talked to a client the other day who was on a Zoom meeting, and he got done with over 100 people, and they're like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? We felt like you were talking directly to me. And they all said that. Wow, how did you do that? I'm like, well, I'm talking to the lens. Instead of looking down here, I'm looking right up there at that lens. And it's kind of hard to do, whether it's a little bitty thumbnail of a lens like you have on most computers, or if it's the big lens like you have for a big television camera. But you have to look at that lens, imagine someone on the other side, whether it's a friend, family member, your spouse, a perfect client, and just picture that person and connect through that lens. That is so, so powerful, and can put you head and shoulders above your competition, above the rest, so that you can really connect with whoever you're dealing with.
And so just know that it feels unnatural, and absolutely it does. It just feels awkward to have a conversation a little bit more with the lens than it is with the person that you're looking at. And that doesn't mean that you can't look down at them occasionally too, because you want to see their reaction, their response. So that's normal. It's a little bit of a dance, but that is the way you make that eye contact and you make that connection.
And especially if you have good news that you want to share with somebody, you want to see their reaction, it's okay to look down. I always say, lead with your chin. Don't just move your eyes down, and they're not going to notice if I just look down real quick and take a look at them. They're going to notice because you're so close to the camera. You can see those eyes pretty well. So move that chin down. If you need to look down at notes and see what the report says, or see what the text is on your phone, and then look back up. But if you want to look down at somebody and tell them the good news, like, guess what? The test was great. And they're celebrating. You want to see that happen. That is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You just don't want to stay looking down the entire time, looking at them like you're talking to them eye to eye, because you have to look up at the lens to do that.
And then we also just want to be thinking of the way we show up, which is when we're showing up for a meeting, we want to show up in the most appropriate way possible. Probably not with sunglasses, but we're so used to these video or audio only meetings. But really, the very best way to make that connection, especially when we're not having the opportunity to be with people in person, is to show up with your camera on and be able to let people see you, because it helps us keep attention. But just be mindful of the way you show up. Do you have a tank top on and you have long hair, so it makes it, they can't see your shirt because they're only seeing this part of you. So just, you want to be appropriate for the situation and not distracting. A
couple of quick tips for you. Number one is the angle. You don't want to, like the picture of me on the left is me setting a laptop down with the table basically at knee level. So I set it down, I push that laptop back, and I'm shooting up my nose. And no one, no offense ladies, but no one looks good with an up the nose shot. So what do? Use a box or big books. Like I have a lot of big baseball books. Put that computer on top of something, raise it up high so the camera lens is basically at eye level. Everyone looks so much better, and there's a better connotation, subliminal connotation, for the way everyone feels about having an eye-to-eye, even level conversation, as opposed to looking down or looking up at someone.
So that's important. And that's an easy thing to fix. You can just get some boxes, or get a box or some books or something easy like that. Yeah. And then also when you're thinking about framing it, when we're in a box, a lot of times in a virtual meeting, we want to just in some ways take up the real estate of the box, because you're just one person, but you also don't want to have all this extra space over your head unless there's a reason. Maybe you have a logo or a sign or something that you're wanting people to be able to see. But most of the time you want it to be more like the school pictures that we brought home, or our kids have brought home from school.
Top of the head near the top of the picture, top of the frame. So that way you fill it up. We're not here to look at this guy's paintings, chances are, unless he's selling the paintings. Right. But that's not why we're looking at. We're looking to see and hear what he has to say. So we want to look at you. You should be filling up the frame.
Here's something also very, very common is the background and lighting. This comes into play and makes such a big difference. But notice in this one, where if you have a bright light behind you, namely a window, sometimes lamps can do this too, but especially windows behind you, it makes you a silhouette. And if our goal is to try to really build connection and trust, if they can't see you and see your eyes, it's going to be really hard to do that.
Because all cameras have, it's called an iris, and an iris is down to not bring in as much light. And all that background light, because of that, makes you darker. So it may just be a little bitty light coming through just a corner window in the picture, but that bright light still makes the camera iris down a little bit. You're not as good looking as you normally are, and we want to make you look as best as you can be.
So you just want to think about that. You want to have the light, the majority of the light needs to be in front of you, not behind you.
Exactly.
Then also be thinking of your audio quality, because likely you've been on a Zoom meeting where, it sounds a little bit like the Peanuts teacher, it's rah, 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 because they just have a lot of ambient noise coming in. And just to give you just a quick idea of the difference that an external microphone does, here I just switched to our built-in microphone. This is what's the one that's built into our computer. I'm only an arm's length away from it. And while it usually sounds okay, just compare that to when I switched my microphone back on, and it just gives a little bit of a crisper, cleaner sound. And we always like to say that you can't squint to listen. So even if I can't see your video clearly, or it's grainy, or the lighting's not that good, if I can hear you, I can still follow along the conversation. If I can't hear you very well, it's hard to do that.
We've talked to lots of people over the course of the last 3+ months who've started, had to use Zoom meetings and stuff like that. And they say, oh my gosh, I've got to get a better webcam because my picture is terrible. Chances are, unless you have a computer from the 80s or 90s, chances are it's not your camera, it's the background and the lighting. Mm-hmm. Because as long as your background and especially the lighting are okay, usually your picture is going to be all right. Doesn't mean it's going to be 4K, it may not be HD, but it's usually going to be good enough for a good looking Zoom meeting or webinar. So again, unless you have
try that first.
Yeah, try that before you invest in a different type of webcam, because chances are it's your lighting. You want that lighting to come in on your face and make sure your face is well lit. And
those webcams are still hard to come by. So, again, and just a little hint, you might try just getting a little microfiber cloth and clean your lens, because if you haven't done that in a while, especially on our phones or iPads or even our laptops, our hands are all over them. And so sometimes it literally is just a little bit of a smudge. And so while we've gotten the sort of the setup of our meeting so that we know we're going to look really good, we also want to make sure they're going to be as productive as possible.
Where's the sound?
Dave,
I can't.
your microphone, it's not on.
Click on the button with the picture of the microphone.
Every time a billing calls in, this happens.
Hello?
Well,
now we can hear
annoying.
you, but we cannot see you.
Every time.
That's like talking to my parents.
So we've all been part of those meetings. And again, when you're having meetings or you're working with patients or potential residents, you want to make sure that you are communicating as effectively as possible. And frankly, it just helps everybody's experience and it makes it much more efficient. So as the host, if you're going to be hosting, or even if you're participating, making sure that you have a really strong internet connection will make such a difference so that you don't have that freezing happening.
A lot of times you can test your audio and video before the meeting starts, so you can make sure that you're not getting on the meeting and you're with the client. Oh, hold on, let me adjust this a little bit. You can check it beforehand before anybody else is there.
On Zoom, there's a way for you to be able to ask it to give you a preview before you jump on. So that can be really helpful. And then of course, having everything ready so that you're not having to, move around a lot or shuffling through papers or get up and go get a drink, just kind of having your whole setup handy is helpful.
Because remember, so many times you set the tones, like I talked about earlier. If you're not ready for it, if something's going wrong, you become a laugher and a leaner and a rambler and a reader and a nervous Nelly. It's not exactly a good first impression or impression of any sorts with the person that you're dealing with.
And then we also want to be thinking of, as again, the host, or sometimes as the host, you have to give instructions to your to the people that you're communicating with, but also important just to know when you're popping on a meeting in particular. Again, we're just using the example of Zoom, but whatever platform you might be using for your telehealth or telemedicine or other community meetings or presentations that you're giving, it's just helping people make sure you know where the mute button is, and make sure you know how to turn off your video as well, so that if you are answering a phone call or you're having to get up and move around, you're not distracting everybody else in the situation.
I know when I first heard that, I was like, stop video? You want me to stop the computer and turn off the meeting completely? No, it's just turn it off so you see a picture or you just see a name. It's not that big, it's just one click.
Right, so like just right now we see Jennifer and Julie, and Jennifer Gibson, also with just their names. And so they just have, and Sharon
And now
too.
Sharon with her picture.
Yeah, just that's the stop video. And there is a way in your Zoom settings to set it so that you can default to a picture instead of just your name when you're logged into the app. That's another option too.
But the thing to remember is that you're always on,
Mhm.
whether you're in any type of meeting or anything where they can hear you, they can see you, or they can know that you're there. So you just got to remember that, so you're not being
Distracting.
I guess distracting.
Right. And letting people in your house know. A lot of times our dogs and our pets don't necessarily pay attention when we tell them that we have a meeting coming, so that they don't always cooperate. But just, helping people know so that if you are in a more open layout where you are having to do your video conferencing, that you don't have people walking behind you, or a kid going mom, or things like that. So it's just helpful for them to know that you're on. And just again, remembering that if you're moving around or you're looking for a new location, that they can still see you, and so it can potentially be a distraction. And we have seen those extreme examples go viral of the husband walking by in his underwear or whatever. We just don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
Probably not. And then here's a tip that a lot of people really love. If you aren't familiar with this already, there is a little feature on Zoom. I haven't found it on any of the other platforms, but it could, not to say it doesn't exist, but there is a little button if you go under your video settings where you can touch up your appearance, and it just gives a little bit of a smoother look. I kind of liken it to the moonlighting effect if you watch that TV show in the 80s with Sybil Shepherd, where it just gives a little bit of a softer focus. So I always have my turned on. I don't know why you do have to actually turn it on. It's not the default, but that's helpful just to know.
It's always great to have a virtual background for some people. If you have a terribly messy background behind you, if you have kids or something, whatever it is where you're like, oh, I can't show that. You can try using a virtual background. Sometimes you need to have a really, really new computer that's very strong with a processor and a graphics card, but try it out and see what you think. Now, I don't know if it looks great if you're in a business meeting and you're like Kim here, who has a palm tree behind her in the ocean. Yeah, that's up to you. You make the call on that, but there are possibilities.
Right. And they do get a little bit buggy. So if it is something that you want to use, you may have to play around. And it may take a little while to figure out one that works best for you and your computer. But again, that's just an option, especially if you just don't want people to see behind you. And we have seen situations where it can actually be kind of a way to brand. So your business or your organization. So that's a little trick too.
Put that logo over your shoulder and it really helps.
And then one thing too, if you're going to be facilitating a meeting or conversation, it is great to be able to know how to share your screen. And this is something that all the platforms let you do. And this could, and a lot of times we use it like we're using now to share a PowerPoint presentation, but you can have it just to share your screen. So if you need to show them some test results, or you need to show them something on the internet or a Word document, I mean, you can use it for so many different things, and it can really, all of these little things are ways to help create more engagement, using the Q&A, using the chat.
Yep.
And it's easier to create that engagement in a meeting situation. Sometimes with a webinar, it is harder because you feel like you're talking to yourself, even though y'all have been great about giving us some comments in the chat, which we really appreciate it, because it does make the person talking feel like, oh, people are listening. There's really people there. So that's great. And there are so many things to remember when you are sitting down to do a virtual communication. And so we've created just a quick, very simple checklist that you can keep handy so that you can just kind of go really quickly through, do I have my background set? How's my lighting? All of those things. So if you're interested in that, it's here for you at barnestmedia.com/virtual. You can just go to that page and it will let you download that free checklist. So that is something that we'd be happy for you to have.
Yeah. And we also have lots of online on-camera coaching available.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so if you feel like your organization or your team could use some assistance in helping to get just some practice and get some even more tips to be able to make them as effective as possible, especially when you're presenting, it's just a whole different world than when you're presenting in person. So that is something that we've been doing as virtual trainings that we can do via Zoom or another platform to be able to train your team.
And we also do a 10-day online on-camera challenge and coaching program. We do that through Facebook, a private Facebook group, where over the course of 2 weeks, 10 days, Monday through Friday, you do 10 different videos. On those 10 videos, you get feedback. There's a training video, then you get feedback of the video that you do, and then you do it again the next day. And it's learning one step at a time. And the difference between day 1 and day 10 is amazing.
we've had so much fun with that program, and we have our next group starting on July 6th, and that's something that we can just do for individuals, or we could even do something custom for your team as well. And Jennifer is one of our recent graduates.
That's right.
So she did such a good job, and it really does. It's been so fun to see just the different industries that we've had come through our challenge, so many different types of different jobs, different trainers and professional speakers, and all kinds of different people, home healthcare people, just all kinds of industries. It's been fun.
Yes.
It's been fun.
Yay!
All right, so,
We've got questions.
Yes.
We've got some questions. So
Okay.
I guess one of the questions is, how do you feel about making it mandatory that they show video? What's your opinion about that on a Zoom call?
I think that, again, if you're the boss and you're the if it's your team, I don't know about making it mandatory, but I do think, though, that it's so helpful because, one, you just know they're paying attention. And, and I guess just making it sort of so many people just have the environment that they just are not happy with at home because they're having to work from home. And in their, we had a girl the other day that was literally the only place she could do it was in her bedroom. Interestingly, her headboard actually looked like a sofa. So we didn't even know she was sitting on her bed, but so you can find different ways. But I mean, I do think that, and again, you're the boss, so you can make it mandatory or you can make it highly encouraged. But I do think it would be a much better way to be able to make sure that everybody is on the same page, make a meeting more efficient and more personable, because a lot of us are missing that personal interaction for sure.
I kind of compare it to having a meeting in a conference room. And if the boss calls a meeting in the conference room, you go to the conference room. And imagine being that one person who says, yeah, boss, I'm just going to phone in and just put me on a conference call. And it's like, really? I don't know if that's really exactly what I'm, as a boss, I don't know if that's what I want. So you got to think about what your boss is looking for. Now, if you've got 3 or 4 kids behind you running around and it's just a tough day because your husband or your wife are doing this or doing that, I understand. And hopefully the boss understands because of what everyone's going through right now. But chances are the boss wants to see you, wants to see those eyes, wants to see that passion about this company that comes through your eyes and let you really connect.
I was going to ask you about passions. That was my next question. So one of the things, I did do the 10-day challenge, and I was really scared when we began. The videos from day 1 to day 10 were completely different. I mean, mind changing. But energy was one of the things. I always thought I was someone who had lots of energy. But what I noticed is, can you speak to, I know you touched on it a little bit, but can you speak to elaborate a little bit more about really the difference and show them the difference of a little bit of energy and really what that difference of projection makes in your ability to connect with your customers?
Well, it's just like that. The fact that, again, I don't know if it's because it's a 2-dimensional medium, but there literally is, you can feel, we just worked with a client at a company the other day who said, I'd never really recorded myself. And so I thought I was being pretty energetic. And she realized the first time, she said, oh no, I looked terribly unhappy and dismissive. And then we did it again. We did another recording with her, and then we watched it back. And she said, I felt like when I was recording it, I had this huge smile on my face internally. She said, but yet when we watched it back, it wasn't the case. So certainly recording yourself is the very best way for you to be able to see the difference. And that's one of the things that, with the exercises that we have you do in the challenge, that you absolutely, you get used to looking at yourself, because a lot of times people don't like being on camera because of that, or they're just not used to that. But I think it's really just having to feel like I'm pushing it just a little bit more than what I feel like I would need to in person. And it usually comes across perfect. So that's the hard part, is that you lose something there. And that's why, if you are getting Zoom fatigue, it's because if you're doing Zoom meetings well, besides the fact that it's just hard sitting and staring for all day, it's just that a lot of times you're using a little more energy than you're used to.
I think, to me, the 2 biggest things, is what I talked about so much in the challenge, is A, you need energy, but B, you've got to show that passion, not only in your voice, but through your eyes. So I'll give you an example. If I'm over here and I'm just not used to it, so I don't know about looking at the lens, and I look over here and I say, hey, my name is Mike. I grew up in the Dallas area. I went to the University of Texas and was a sportscaster for 29 years. And now I'm helping people be more comfortable and confident on camera. Okay, do you really get anything out of that? You got the information, But we like to say that facts fade, and that was just all facts. But if I'm looking at the camera, and you can see in my eyes, you can see the passion I have. That I grew up in Dallas. I loved the Cowboys. I went to the University of Texas. I loved the Longhorns. I was a sportscaster for 29 years, and I love doing that. But now I love helping you just reach through that camera lens with your eyes and connect with people. Okay, I use a little bit more energy there, and you see in my eyes how much I love what I do, as opposed to being down here and being kind of blah.
Well, and I think a lot of people will think that, oh, it's because, you know, I'm an extrovert, that it's easier for extroverts than introverts. He is a huge introvert.
I'm a huge introvert, and I'm very shy, actually. But I learned a long time ago 2 things. A, the camera does not bite. It does not bite. And number 2 is, again, you've got to picture someone on the other side of that lens. And you can't look down here and look at Jennifer in the eye. You've got to look up here and picture Jennifer, or picture Kim, or picture your ideal client, picture a family member, picture that person, and just let it come out through your eyes, just like you do one-on-one. If I'm looking at Kim straight on, that passion comes out here. Well, the same passion needs to come out through that camera lens so that you can really connect and then show that person how much you love what you do. Whatever the field of work it is, whether it's healthcare or anything else, most people just get so excited about what they do. Show everyone that through your eyes, through that camera lens.
And it just takes practice. I mean, some of it just takes acknowledgement and being aware and practice.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. All right. Anybody have some questions or somebody?
I see David has a question. What is the best type of light? Will an LED work? And chances are the best type of light usually is the outdoor type of light.
The white.
It's a white light. So if you're putting something overhead or an LED light, you want it pretty white, because biggest thing, you don't want conflicting temperatures, because it's the different temperatures that give you different colors. Right. So you want a good white light, because it usually looks the best. So it gives you the good coloring for letting your color really come out.
And we have we have some examples on our website that have on our resources page that gives just some different ideas of some ring lights and different lights that you can use. I mean, you may have a lamp that actually might work okay as long as it has a shade. Sometimes even the desk lamps can work well, but you want to make sure that that instead of a desk lamp that can kind of be a little bit of a spotlight, you might put a little parchment paper to help diffuse the light. So there's some homemade things that you can do. But the main thing is, as Mike mentioned, you don't want to have a bulb in your overhead light that's yellow and a light over here that's got the more daylight. So it's a whiter light, because it'll kind of make you look a funny color. Yeah. Affect your coloring.
Yeah. But LED lights work really well.
Any tips and tricks about Facebook Live?
What about?
Well,
the easiest trick, and this is, I think it's only on iPhone. I don't think you can do it on Android. But the biggest thing, if you ever notice, if you do Facebook Live, if you don't do anything, you're flipped around.
Oh, right.
So like in the mirror. So, which is okay if you're not worried about your part or anything like that. But if you have a word on your shirt,
logo,
or a logo
brand
right here, or something behind you that says something about your company,
or you're saying, hey, look at my new best-selling book, and it's backwards,
and it's flipped.
So you can go in there, and there's a you hit
few settings,
like 1, 2, 3, I think three buttons to go to settings, and it's flip it around to flip it that way. Now the problem with that is as you know, in Facebook Live, you can be watching yourself and then hit a button to use this camera and let's look out in front of me and let me show you the neighborhood. Well, if you flip yourself around, then you're going to flip the neighborhood around. So now the neighborhood's going to be turned around. So you got to pick one or the other if you're going to play with both cameras. But if you're showing yourself, I suggest you flip that camera around so people can read everything just like they're supposed to.
Okay, good advice. Good advice. Other questions? I know we're getting towards 12:42.
Somebody asked about how important is your backdrop?
Oh, good one.
And this is where, I mean, it's tricky because everybody is trying to make do from home. And while you may not have an extra bedroom that you can transform, which obviously that's awesome if you can, but if you don't, there are things. I just feel like you just don't want it to be distracting so that people are focusing on the background and not you. So there's different things that you can do to, you can find temporary things that you can put up. You can try the virtual backgrounds as an option. You can just try to, sometimes you can just set up a corner. So maybe you find there's this one little nook. We have one client in one of our programs who her lighting is terrible in her office, and she was moving around, and the best place we found was literally in her living room next to her TV stand. And it was just a little corner where she has some light coming in from the outside. She has this cute chair, and that's all you see. And so, you know, and now if you're having to do all day in Zoom, then that's probably not realistic because it's in the middle of the living room. But I think that it is, I just think it's helpful if it can just be something that's not distracting.
I personally think that 4 months ago, that if you were on any type of Zoom meeting or any type of professional meeting on Zoom, that you need to look good, you need to have a business-like background, and you need to be as professional as you would be at the office as far as your surroundings, what it look like. Starting in the middle of March, I think it was a case of, oh my gosh, we're on. I don't care what it looks like. Forget about my lighting. We can see him, we can hear him. Let's talk real quick. As time goes on, as we get through April and May, now near the end of June, and we get into July, I think that the grace is going to slowly keep going away to where people, especially business people, executives who are on these meetings, are going to say, you know what? would have been more impressed with her or with him if that background had looked a little bit better. I mean, it just looks so shabby and it's not cleaned up, and I don't know, as opposed to 3 months ago, it's like, as long as we see him, it's okay.
Well, and I think that a lot of those are just subtle things that the other person may not even be able to articulate. So I think when you think about, you know, can they see our eyes because we're well lit? Are we actually looking at the lens so that it can connect with us? Are we dressed appropriately? Do we have, you know, a decent background? Or again, it doesn't have to be anything like a big set, but I think those are all things that are subtle so that the person, when they walk away from the conversation, feels like, oh, that was good. Because a lot of times, and this happens when we meet people in person, you know, you walk away from a conversation sometimes and you just think, I just didn't really connect with them. I'm not really sure why. Yeah. And there could be a host of reasons, but sometimes it could be as subtle as, I realized that maybe I didn't articulate it at the time, or I couldn't actually think about that, but it could have been as simple as that they just never looked at me the whole time because they were socially awkward.
It's true.
That could be the case, but so I think that the background can play into that, just like some of these other things that we talked about today, where they just leave an impression that may not be the impression you're trying to make.
Yeah.
Good point. You know, Julie had a really good question. Any tips for those of us who use their hands? That's a really good question, Julie.
And one of the biggest things we tell people is, if you use your hands in your personality, keep on using those hands, because we don't want you to sit on your hands and suddenly, I can't even talk because I can't.
No words come out.
And so be yourself, but you also have to be a little bit mindful about the camera and about your distance from the camera, because so many times, most of the time, you know, we're about 2 feet away from the camera as we're sitting at our desk with the camera right there. Well, if we're someone who uses our hands all the time doing this, well, suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, Mike has big, gigantic hands that are just coming at me. So you have to keep your hands maybe a little closer to you. If you're one who likes to say, look at this, what I have in my hand right here. Oh, you can't see it. Let me move it over here. So know that even though you're in this box, so to speak, that doesn't mean you can't use your hands, but don't talk about what's over here when nobody can see it.
And again, that I think comes into play as a distraction. You know, are you excessively using them and, you know, covering up our face? Yeah. Is it excessive to where then it becomes a distraction? If it's just us having a conversation, there's not an issue. I mean, you don't want to be having your hands moving down here because you're trying to keep them out of the frame, and then all of a sudden you just see my shoulders moving and you're wondering, you know, like, why is she wiggling so much? You know, what's she doing? So,
and you also don't want a wider shot. You know, most of y'all have shots from the, you know, roughly chest up, but Kim and I are a little bit looser since there's two of us. You don't want to be down here and, you know, doing the proverbial wringing of your hands, because you don't want to use them. You're a little bit nervous. You're doing like this for the whole time that you're talking, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's he doing with his hands down there?
So if you're going to do that, keep him out of frame.
Keep him out of frame. But the basic, and I know it's easier than it sounds, but be yourself. And I know that's hard when you're on camera because you're not used to it, but with practice, it happens. So if you're someone who uses your hands to talk a little bit like this, that's fine. Keep doing that. If you're someone who likes to leave your hands like this while you're talking, keep doing that. Be yourself. Just don't be a distraction.
That's good. All right. Any other questions? I think we hit, if you can check, I think we hit most of, does anybody want to?
Oh, there's a new message.
New message? Let's see.
Freezing a Zoom meeting.
And that's so frustrating. And that generally is usually it's their internet connection that's causing them to freeze. And it is hard when you're working with your patients or your clients to be able to say, hey, do you have that hardwired Ethernet connection? Because they may not, but that often is their internet connection.
Yeah, and which is especially in today's world with the bandwidth being used by so many people, Wi-Fi makes it tougher. So if you're not on Wi-Fi, if you can use a landline, Ethernet connection, it would be better.
Yeah, that'll just ensure your connectivity.
Chances are.
Yeah.
Perfect. So does anybody want to, I can make you a panelist, anybody, and want Kim and Mike to take a look at your background and, maybe the way you look and just, give you some, feedback. I promise they won't bite. Their feedback is awesome.
Thank you. It's just because sometimes there's some easy fixes that if you've got a window on one side, can you just move over a little bit? Can you just turn a little bit?
Yeah.
So
like, not to pick on her, but since she's one of the panelists, Jennifer Gibson, when we started, you had the two windows right over your shoulders that you could see.
That's not Jennifer.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Jennifer.
Julie. That's Julie.
Sorry, Julie.
I ran around while y'all were talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So Julie, you had those two windows right there, and then you moved it, and it looks better now. But those two windows, it's not like there was anything bad about the windows, but because that bright light, even though it was just a little bitty corner up there, exactly, that caused you to be a little bit darker. And that's why I was talking about the iris, the camera iris is down, so you were darker. And so what you did was perfect.
Better,
it's exactly what you need to do, because when you see something like that, when you set up your camera and you can see it, you go, oh wow, yeah, that's a little bit bright, and then adjust accordingly.
Thank you.
So good job, Julie.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm a quick learner, but I am the hand lady. And then I also thought I wasn't wearing enough makeup for being on camera, but I think it's the lighting.
Yes, I think that's probably true. If you could get a little more light on your face, it would likely brighten you up a lot. Yeah. But I do think that, again, I mean, some people just don't like to wear makeup. I do think that if you're somebody who does wear makeup, I think it's helpful if you have, eye makeup, as far as even if it's just mascara and lips, because it just helps it stand out better. And when we're talking, we're looking at our mouths or our eyes. Yeah. But I think that, yes, some extra light. And so a lot of times, if you can find a spot where you can just turn around and be facing the window, oftentimes that gives great light. Right now, I'm sitting in front of two big windows. I don't even have, we do have one light on over here, but we don't even have this light, the other little light that we have set up on right now, because we get enough natural light coming in at this time of day.
Yeah. And if you're ever using a phone, the cameras on phones are so good that they iris up to bring in more light, to where chances are it's going to look great. Maybe a little grainy if you're in a really dark room, but it's really going to look good.
And our computer cameras are generally not as good as our phone cameras. So that's just something to keep in mind. And sometimes it depends on the brand of your computer. There are some computers that value a good camera more than others. So there's some that are not as good and some that are better. Yeah. Okay, Kay.
So Kay, awesome. We just made her a panelist. So
yes,
Kay.
We see you, Kay.
Hi, Kay. How are you?
Thanks for joining.
I'm good. I do most of my Zoom calls from this location because it's the best as far as lighting in the house. And I know that my camera angle is not correct, and it has not been because I don't have anything to put it on because I'm on my iPhone. But what about the lighting? Is the lighting too much behind me? Yes. What is your opinion on this?
Do you have the ability to turn around and have be facing the window?
Possibly, yes.
So that would probably just be easier. The other thing that you could potentially do is just make sure, you just always want to make sure you have more light on front of you. So
front of you than
because you have that brightness behind you, you could, it would be great if you don't have the option to move around, if that's sort of like, no, this is where my computer needs to live or my phone needs to live. If you could at least get more light on your face, then we can see your face better.
And that's the hard part is you say, oh, but I've got this great tree out here and this great greenery. It just looks so nice. Chances are
they're not going to see
it. But
it.
chances are it's so bright you don't see it very well. Right. And you probably want to close the blinds if you could, or drapes or whatever you have, so that you don't see that, to make it a little bit darker, so that there's more light seemingly in comparison on you than coming up from behind you.
And it may be that at different times of day, depending on how it's shaded, it may be that, say, like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's really shady in your backyard. And so then actually maybe you do see the trees, as long as you have some light in front of you, and you're not actually getting that bright sun. Because even the windows we have here, if we do something earlier in the morning, we get so much sun in that it's too bright. And so we'll have to close the blinds actually. So you just have to, different times of day can impact that as well. And then did you say you're using your iPhone?
I am using my iPhone,
Do you have do you have a tripod, a little tripod?
I'm going to be purchasing one,
Perfect.
yes.
Okay,
Yay.
And then I have another quick question. Do you have to look exactly at the camera lens? Can you look a little bit below it, or do you really need to be looking exactly at the camera lens?
It depends on how close you are.
Okay.
When you're I'll just show you. So if I'm looking right at the lens, if I look just slightly down to where all I see is where it says Zoom webinar, at the top of my screen, you can tell a difference, can't you?
Yes.
So it's because I'm close. If I was another foot back, then you'd have more, then you have more grace, because it's sort of, I look in the right direction, then it will look the same. But just the closer you are, the more noticeable it is if you're just a smidge off. And so that's why it gets really hard that, sometimes you'll see people who are, especially when they're giving a presentation, trying to read, and it's very obvious that they're just reading from here or reading from here. So it's tricky. So that's where, you don't have to look at the camera the entire time, but you just want to be intentional about when you're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for playing.
Great questions. I love it. Anybody else? Come on. You have two experts here. Anybody? No? Maybe didn't shower or they're driving. And I've done that before. You can ask my team. So.
I will. Monica says she will.
Oh, yay, Monica. She does. Monica does. I'm going to make you, give me 1 sec. I'm going to allow you to talk, and then I'm going to make you a panelist. Hold on.
Sarah just got back from playing golf. That's nice. Baseball hat. That's fine.
Bear with me here. I got to get Monica. I promise I'll get you. Is she? Hold on. I think she's promoted to panelist here.
Yeah, she is.
She's
the
turn
camera on. It's,
awesome.
Start video.
Now, while she sets her camera, Monica does tons of presentations. So every single, Monica, you probably a couple times a week at least are doing Facebook Lives and presenting about your company, Impact Family Wellness, right?
Yeah, I am. I don't know why it's not.
I'll help you. Let me see. I will make magic happen. Let's see. I might remove you. Give me 1 second here.
Can you click on start video, Monica?
Do you see that option?
I
wonder if you logged in with just your audio, which is sometimes can happen.
Should I leave and come back?
Yeah, leave and come back. Oh, wait, no. I got it. Give me a sec. This is the first time that we've ever done Zoom webinar, so bear with me, y'all.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Hey, good job.
Right?
Good.
I have a lot going on. So part of my problem is when I use Zoom, I have a laptop, but then in front of me, I have I don't know if you can see it. I have a giant computer screen, right? So
gotcha.
Oh, okay.
So it all is dongled in. My IT husband would be proud that that's a dongle. It's a little bit low.
It's a little low, but not deadly low.
And sometimes literally it's just, do you have a book? Do you know what I mean? Like just literally, because like we have we're using my desktop right now, and I just got one of those stand-up desk things, so it automatically raises it up. But before that, we just had a thick book underneath the computer. Gotcha. Just to kind of raise it up just a little bit. And then one thing you have to do when you raise it up, sometimes you still have to
angle it back down,
angle it towards you a little bit so that you don't have as much headroom or too much headroom. Yeah, much better.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah. And you have a window in kind of at an angle, or is it right in front of you?
Right there.
Okay, gotcha. Right.
That helps. That helps so much.
Yeah. So you may have that situation too, that different times of day where if you're getting so much light or not as much, that, you know, sometimes an extra little light can help if you are, if it's a cloudy day.
West facing window. So it's usually not till like 4 in the afternoon that unless it's wintertime, and then sometimes I'll get some of that in my face, but for the most part it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we find too that the other day we were doing one and it was really cloudy. So we set the lighting because it was cloudy, and then the sun would come out and then all of a sudden we'd be super bright. So when you can have those extra lights that are handy, that sometimes can kind of offset that so that you're not as affected by, you know, your camera going in and, you know, your kind of your picture going in and out, or the lighting changing on how you look. So great.
No, that looks good.
Great.
All right. Well, if anybody else has any questions, let us know. And if not,
Amanda says, what about purchasing a screen or divider?
Sure.
Ooh, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah,
that could be a nice option.
If you're worried about the background, whether it's you see into the kitchen or you see into a messy living room or whatever you see, and you just want to put some type of screen or divider right here, definitely.
Yeah, that could be a good help too. Because again, it'll just give you more confidence and make you more comfortable showing up and turning your camera on for meetings and for presentations when you feel like you sort of have that dialed in. And that's one of the things that we always try to work so hard with our challenge, is that, you know, when you know the things you can control so that you know you're going to look good and sound good, then all you're focusing on is, what am I saying? Not all of that other stuff at the same time too, because my brain only thinks of one thought at a time. And if I'm too distracted by, oh shoot, my whatever, then I'm not actually thinking about the words that are going to come out of my mouth.
Well, I agree. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer, go.
Sorry, I'm driving, so I can't type it in, but you were talking about getting some sort of a divider and backgrounds and things, and I apologize if I missed this earlier, but what about color preference for a background? If you have the option, do you have a white background versus a blue background versus a green background? Is there a preference in colors that's best for everybody?
Sure.
Well,
maybe not for everybody. If you have a stark white background, it's going to be kind of like not quite as bad, but kind of like having a light back there. So the camera's going to iris down a little bit, and any light that you have may reflect back. So, you know, stark white.
Unless it's really well lit.
Yeah, unless it's really well lit. Yeah. Even then, gosh, stark white would be really tough. But otherwise, basically, Kim likes to say any color that looks good on you. Now, Kim loves wearing royal blue. So if you had a royal blue background, you know, she'd kind of blend in. So, you know, you don't want to don't have the color back there, the exact same color of what you're wearing all the time. But basically any color that looks good on you, well, chances are will look good as your background.
Or complement. So, you know, if you're kind of a taupey or a beigey or an, you know, like ours is kind of a grayish blue. So, but if it was a grayish that had a different color tone that wasn't more of a bluish color tone, it might not look as good. Yeah. So, and you know, if you have a green one, if you want to use it as a green screen, that can help with if you are trying to use a virtual background, that can make those work a little bit better. But then you just have to not wear the color of the same color as the screen, because you'll disappear if you do the virtual background. And
it's kind of funny that even though it's just a painted wall, chances are, if you love, oh my gosh, I love black, let's paint it black, or I love dark green, let's do that. The darker that it is, the more light you actually are going to need in front of you. Chances are, just because you're not going to have any light back there. So it's a lighting factor as well. It's not going to be huge, but still, whatever your background is going to affect the lighting at least a little bit.
So, right, depending on your skin tone and your colors, and if you never had your colors done, that's kind of a fun thing to do. But looking for colors that complement the colors that you like to wear, so that you can still wear the colors that you really like, but not blend into your background. Yeah. Does that help, Jennifer?
Question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right, I think we are at our 1 o'clock. I think we're good. Well, a huge thank you to Kim and Mike Barnes. You have been amazing. I know that I learned a ton from the 10-day challenge, and I feel like I'm going to move to the next stage. They have different types of things that they can do to help your business. So for those of you that are business owners, they can make a huge difference in the confidence. For me, it's really been a confidence thing. So I'm really glad that you were able to be with us and share and support all of us who are out there trying to put our best face forward. Huge thank you to Jennifer as well, and Sharon and Julie. We're going to be doing these speaker presentations every 2 weeks. So I'm not sure what the next 2 weeks is. So if maybe one of my...
I know what it is.
Oh,
would you like me to talk?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So again, this is Jennifer with Ascension-Seton Hospice, and our next presentation in 2 weeks is going to be by our hospice chaplains, and I believe he may have another guest or two that'll be contributing, but the topic is going to be spiritual care in diverse cultures. It definitely comes up in hospice, but can come up in any situation where you're trying to provide support and care to someone in your industry, and everybody's culture is very different, so that really means that you need to be respectful of that and offer spiritual care that is appropriate for them, and just kind of how that works for us in hospice, but also can translate to other people in other situations. And I think it's also a very relevant topic for right now. So spiritual care in cultural diversity.
Wonderful. So go ahead.
And Jennifer, would you mind real quick? Sarah had asked if before we log off, could we show our contact information again? So do you mind if I put that up real quick, just so that in case anybody wants to take, if you want to take a quick screenshot or snap, just snap it with your phone, snap a picture, that would be great. Just because if you are interested in doing the 10-day challenge, we would love to have you. And, or if you'd rather us just come in and work with be able to come up with something custom for your team, we could absolutely do that. But barnesteammedia.com, and then you can find everything from there.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you.
Thank you again, Kim and Mike.
You're sweet. You're sweet.
Thank you so much. Such great wisdom and professionalism. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well,
we're glad to be with you.
We wish everybody a wonderful day. Stay dry. I guess we're stopped the rain now. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.